Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. It came as flashes in the dark. Vivid memories of sight and sound. The draw of breath with each attack, the hint of desperation at every dodge. The feel of fire in his veins, the feel of sweat stinging his eyes, and pain in his lungs. It was terrifying. It was thrilling. He remembered fighting like a man possessed, his friends at his sides. A war against a god. They say you can't really know what kind of person you are until you are at death's door. For Naruto, well, that happened to be right now. Given what kind of hell they just went through, one could assume Sasuke would be all for calling it a day. Dusting his hands and saying, "Yeah. Fuck this. I'm out for now." No one would question it. Hell, most would agree with him. I mean, fighting a god. A nifty spot holder on a resume, but something that would lead most people to call it quits for a day or 50. Naruto was only half surprised when Sasuke went off the deep end again, and revealed his plan to assassinate the Gokage. Don't get him wrong, the assassination thing wasn't surprising. It was the reason why. Bear the world's hate. What an idiot. Naruto conveniently ignored the time when he acted much the same. And so, once more, the two titans clashed. Again in the Valley of the End. Power against power. Steel against steel. Fist against fist. Of course it would have to come down to their signatures. Rasengan, and Chidori. Like all the times before, the two attacks gave out before their owners, and both men went blow away from one another. Naruto sans a right arm, Sasuke missing his left. Naruto had to chuckle, even if it was more of a wheeze, at the duality of it. Two sides of the same coin and all. I won't let you beat me like this. Sasuke's voice carried over the roar of the water from the demolished falls. Broken and bitter. Angry and loud. Naruto let himself wonder at that. How odd. Sasuke was usually more mild-mannered. If just a bit of a dick. Maybe it was the blood loss. He turned his head to see Sasuke embedded in the cliff face across from him. The look on Sasuke's face was absolutely loathing. Naruto would have sighed, but his collapsed lung was making it hard enough to breathe. Naruto could feel the world fading around him, color fading in and out as darkness overcame him. Man, what a shitty 17th birthday. Naruto, you have to move, Kurama shouted in his mind. It took Naruto a moment to understand the urgency, before he noticed the makings of a purple circle in the edge of his vision. Ah, so that was Sasuke's plan. Without the old sage or the previous Hokage. Naruto looked up at the sky, drinking in the cloud-covered sun. For all the destruction Sasuke and himself had unleashed, it was a nice day out. Maybe this is why Shikamaru likes cloud watching. One could almost call it peaceful. A void closed around Naruto's field of vision, and all he knew was falling. Sasuke looked at the empty space Naruto had just inhabited. A feeling quite foreign to him taking hold. It wasn't pride. It wasn't joy. Guilt. Guilt ate away at his heart. Sasuke's vision slowly darkened, exhaustion and lack of chakra taking its toll. The last thought on his mind, what have I done? The noise of the falls and the falling of stone was Sasuke's only answer. Followed by the angry roar of the tailed beasts as they were freed from their prisons. Sasuke cursed, even as he blacked out. Because even when he was lost in another dimension, with no way home, Naruto beat him. Falling is a surreal experience. Fear drops into the deepest pit of your heart as you slowly come to terms with the fact that there is nothing to catch you from gravity's embrace. The rushing of wind, the feeling of weightlessness, falling past the clouds that Shikamaru so envied. It was both amazing and horrifying. For Naruto, it was his current problem. He had no energy, and he couldn't move, much less mold chakra. However, Naruto wouldn't be Naruto if he let that bother him. Was he worried? A bit. Was he scared? Not on your life. It took a lot to scare the great Uzumaki Naruto. Though, scared or not, he would probably die here. Hey, sorry Kurama. Guess I should have taken your advice, huh? Naruto spoke into his mind calmly. Death wasn't something he actually feared. He had faced it many times in his life. By no means was he looking for death or accepting of it, but he wasn't afraid of it. Quote. I don't know if I can save you, Naruto. Kurama responded. Tearing them away from their world hadn't done either Naruto or Kurama any favors, and it once more left Kurama with only half of his chakra. He didn't know if he had enough to save them both. But, they say you can't really know what kind of person you are until you are at death's door. It was at this moment, as Naruto broke from the oddly colored clouds, as the land expanded below them, Kurama learned what kind of person he was. He was the kind that would rather die than let his one friend, the one person he cared about in such a very long time, meet that same fate. So, he did what he thought was only right. What are you doing? Naruto acts as his body was enveloped in a cloak of red. I'm transferring the last of my chakra into a cushion for impact. It might not work. It might kill us both. But you have the devil's luck, so maybe only one of us will bite the kunai. Kurama chuckled after he spoke. The others would be dumbstruck to see him, the proud Nine Tails, giving the last of himself to try and save a human. But, won't that kill you? Naruto shouted. He didn't want anyone to sacrifice themselves for him, ever again. Especially not Kurama. Who knows? I've never used up all my chakra before. But this instance might be worth the risk. Kurama, brace yourself as much as you can. The ground is coming up fast. The bubbling aura around Naruto solidified, and he streaked across the sky, the ground approaching like the judgment of the damned. For weeks, people would speak of the red comet and the blessing or evil it brought. The world over would know of the blinding light the horizon was bathed in upon impact. Rumor and story spread like a massive game of Chinese telephone, all traced back to a single source. And the Mao, rulers of the underworld, would send many a search party into the familiar forest, searching for whatever had crashed into their realm. Searzex was a tall devil. He had flowing red hair, and striking blue eyes. A handsome, angular face was framed by how his hair was styled. His ornamental pauldron armor seated upon his shoulders, colored in a dull gray and bright gold. He looked every bit regal as he did warrior. Well, if it weren't for the way his head was currently rested in his hands. For weeks he had sent out search parties to the familiar forest, where a strange, blood-red meteorite had landed. Now usually that wouldn't be odd, seeing as meteorites impacted Earth all the time. But the familiar forest was in its own pocket dimension. Meaning something would have had to force its way past the barriers the first Lucifer had constructed. No small task. It was only due to the master of the familiar forest, that the Mao had even been alerted to the occurrence. Now, just days before the full moon, Searzex was in an odd way. His little sister, Rias, had begged him to go with her to get her first familiar a few weeks back, and he had agreed. However, with some possible unknown threat, he was tempted to call the whole thing off till they could be assured of any aspiring devil's safety. But then Rias would be so sad. And it would be his fault. Searzex-sama, would it not be simple to recall your peerage and have them all act as escort for the young lady? Graphia Luciphage, his wife and queen, questioned. She maintained her position to his right-hand side, a half-step behind him. Her maid outfit pressed and pristine. Searzex brightened at those words. It had been some time since he, himself had set out on a mini-adventure. And it had been years since his peerage had all been together. Graphia, you're a genius, he shouted as he sprang to give his loving wife a tight hug, and possibly a kiss, for her idea. Only to be smacked down by her delicate hand. Lord Lucifer, acting in such a way as unseemly while at work. His wife's monotone voice carried over his whining as he held his head where a bump was forming. You're so mean, Graphia. Rias looked at the people around her, a suspicious curiosity taking hold. Her brother's peerage had little reason to ever get together, each having work and/or families of their own. Along with all of them being high-class devils, they hadn't served in a servant role in years. At 10, even Rias had some suspicions as to the reasons why. There was McGregor Mathers, a world-renowned magician, her brother's bishop, and a bit of a magical legend. A founding member of Golden Dawn, the premier magic association. He was a taller man, on level with her brother easily. He was lanky, with a beautiful mix of black and blonde hair, that flowed down his back in waves. He had a slightly haunting look, with a sunken smile and slighted pupils. It was a little odd, but Rias had seen stranger beings. Next was Soji Okita, Knight Master Swordsman and former captain of the 1st Shizengumi squad of days gone by. He still donned his old uniform. A haori and hakama over a white kimono. A white tsuki crossed over his chest and tied along his back. The haori was colored a light blue with stripes along the sleeves. He held the visage of a man in his late 20s, much like McGregor. A sword rested on his hip, attached to the white belt he wore. He had light brown hair with hazel for eyes. Along with these two master-class fighters, walked Surtur II. The underworld knew him as the ultimate rook. He was a large man, standing a staggering 2 meters tall, pounds of muscle racked his body, and an untamed aura escaped his form regularly. His always present bottle of sake tied at his waist. Whatever he and Soji were talking about must have been hilarious, because his booming laugh split the silent forest with ease, his black hair shaking as his head was thrown back. Beowulf, one of her brothers, Pawn S. A descendant from the hero Beowulf, he was a man with an athletic build and an air of seriousness. He was a sharp contrast from her brother's usual behavior. He looked in his mid-20s, with short-cropped brown hair and a stylish suit, not really meant for the woods. That image was broken when Surtur slapped him on the back and jokingly called him his sidekick, making a rain cloud appear above his head. Last, and far from least, walked Graphia Luciphage. The ultimate queen, her sister-in-law and the second most important woman in Rias' young life. She had always been the serious one of the group, never allowing for untoward silliness or impropriety. Graphia was like an eye of the hurricane. Control. Power. It inspired Rias like no other. Her brother had informed her a few hours before they had left that his peerage would be tagging along in their escapade into the familiar forest. She hadn't made a fuss of it simply because she didn't want her brother to change his mind. It had taken her weeks to convince him to take her, and after the news broke that a meteorite had crashed into the forest last month, she was worried he would go back on his promise. If dealing with a few extra people meant she finally received her first familiar, then so be it. Welcome, Lord Lucifer. A voice called from the trees, before a figure dropped in front of the gaggle of devils. It took a lot for Rias not to squeal in excitement. He looked just like Ash Ketchum. Down to the strange baseball-style hat. Even as a closet otaku, Rias didn't want to look improper in front of the familiar master. She is the heir of the Grimoire house after all. She would have to come back here later as her own peerage grew. It wouldn't do to make a bad first impression. Ah, hello there. Dachi. Glad you could meet us today. Sirzex greeted amicably. He had always enjoyed talking to Dachi, the man's fun-loving nature reminding Sirzex of himself. Dachi gave a light bow and tried to appear disarming. Some of the hardest hitters in the underworld stood before him. Lady Graphia alone was terrifying on a good day. He took in the 7 people before him in a small wonder, before thinking to speak. Who shall be receiving a familiar today, Lord Lucifer? Dachi spoke slowly. Ah yes. Sirzex reached behind him and pushed his little Rias forward from the area she had partially hidden away in. That would be my sister. Rias Grimoire. Dachi looked at the diminutive red head before him and shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time he had helped a young heir claim a familiar. Have you given any thought to the type of familiar you want? Dachi asks. Well, I have a fair grasp on most forms of magic, the girl began, a hand on her chin. And I don't have any peerage members yet. Could you recommend something in a support role? Perhaps in medicine or information? Dachi blinked in surprise. Usually when people came here, they either wanted something strong and flashy, or had no idea what they wanted. This was kind of refreshing. Well, for information, this forest hosts several prospects. Bats, songbirds, and foxes, chief among them. Fast, intelligent, and very keen of hearing and sight. Dachi rambled off. For a medical support, we have undines. They are water spirits and are exceptional at medical magic. However, they are a bit odd. Odd. Rias chirped. Odd how? Ah. Well. Dachi rubbed the back of his head, before looking straight the rest of Rias' party for help, all of which just avoid his gaze and carried on in their own little worlds. Useless devils. Perhaps I could introduce you to one. Her name is Haruko, and she has been very interested in finding a master. Dachi said as he motioned for Rias and company to follow him. It took a short walk, but after a scant several minutes, they arrived at the edge of a lake. All was silent for a moment, before Dachi shouted, Haruko. A magical display of water played out before the group of devils, drawing a gasp from young Rias. It was awe-inspiring, tantalizing, wonderful. And then it wasn't. As the water flowed back into the lake, a tall, muscular woman stood on the lake, flexing. Her arms. Yeah. Same as always with these Undan types. Sirzex spoke, amusement in his tone. He felt bad for allowing this sight to greet his little Rias Tan, but it was always funny to see the reactions to the Undan. Rias felt herself go green, nausea washing over her like a puttered wave. She turned and bolted into the woods, a scream echoing after her. So gross. Ah. That might be a trouble. Dachi spoke, slightly numb as he watched the little girl run into the deadly forest. A beat. Grimori-san. Dachi shouted as the other devils moved to chase the wayward girl down. Haruko just stood on the lake, a sweat drop sliding down the side of her face as the clearing emptied of people. A slight sob escaped her. Why couldn't she find a master? Rias continued to pelt through the forest, running from the horrific sight she just bore witness to. To be fair, Rias was still a young girl, so seeing something so wrong, she could be forgiven for overreacting. Rias was brought to an abrupt halt, however, her mind catching up with her actions. She was a young girl, now deep within the familiar forest that she was visiting for the first time. And now she was alone. And lost. Ni-sama. The young redhead cried. Usually Rias would avoid calling for her brother like the plague, but this was different. She cast her head to the left and right, the realization slowly dawning on her. This forest was large, exceedingly so. A soft gulp left her lips. A snap resounded from behind her, making Rias jump. She spun on a dime, casting her eyes into the shadows of the trees, looking for the source of the disturbance. Blood-red eyes caught hers. A deep growl emanating from its direction. Rias stumbled back, fear gripping her heart. She had heard of the types of monsters that stalked these woods, beasts that would rend flesh from bone at the slightest provocation. That's why she had begged Sirzex to bring her. She had been sure, in secret, he would protect her from anything. The growling increased, and from the shadows strolled a massive fox. Easily 2 meters from paw to shoulder. Its fur crimson as her own hair, a snarl on its muzzle. It walked at a slow, steady pace, each footfall making the pit in Rias' stomach grow. 9 tails waved behind the beast, and Rias felt despair. This was a creature of legend, worshipped as a god in certain regions of Japan. A kyubi, seen as a beast of catastrophe, as well as being known for its supreme intelligence. It was said a single 9-tailed fox was worth an army of mid-class devils. The yokai faction had managed to remain neutral during the 3-faction war due to the leadership of Yasaka, a 9-tailed yokai fox. The beast displayed its tails in an act of fanfare, and Rias, for all her fear, looked on in awe. Even with her life now on the balance, she couldn't help but admire the creature's beauty. The fox jumped forward, its maw parted to sink its fangs into Rias. She screamed and fell backwards, arms shooting up, to have some fur of protection. She waited for the pain. But it never came. Rias cracked a single, hesitant eye open. The fox had stopped just short of her. She could see its nose moving, possibly taking in her scent. It took a small half step back, and cast a critical eye at the young girl, before turning around and looking at Rias for a moment. It suddenly bounded to the tree line from whence it came, stopping momentarily to look back at her. Rias blinked at the odd behavior, casting a look around the trees surrounding them. Do you want me to follow you? She found herself asking, a conflicted look crossing her features. The fox nodded once, then shook its head toward the darkened woods. Rias took a moment to think. This was a legendary beast, something that could easily kill her. If she followed it, the odds of that happening increased substantially by standard logic. But why hasn't it yet? A small voice rang in the back of her head. Rias looked around once more, and realized she only had one option for being saved. She was lost in the heart of a forest, with monsters potentially everywhere. The fox was likely to be avoided by other creatures, based on its sheer size alone. If she followed it, and it didn't kill her, as it so easily could have, maybe someone would find her. Rias slowly took a step forward, and then another. Stealing her resolve, She followed the fox into the woods. It was a short walk, at least in Ria's mind. The fox had led her to a cliff side, where a large opening sat. She noticed a lot of the plant life leading to the area was dead, or even burned. But around the cave entrance, plant life bloomed spectacularly. There was even some of the smaller familiar creatures playing in the area, to the young girl's amazement. Little birds and foxes played by the mouth of the cave, a pair of sprite dragons flew above, almost lazily. Even a pixie or two could be seen relaxing on the large flowers in the area. Ria stood still basking in the serenity of the scene, a soft smile stretching across her face. This dot was nice. A huff and slight growl drew her attention back to the fox. It stood at the mouth of the cave, making soft motions with its head, as if to beckon her to enter. Rias took one last look at the lovely planet and animal life in the area, committing it to her young mind. Rias quickly made her way over and into the cave, a slight trepidation in her movements. She had trusted the fox so far, what's one more leap? A soft glow illuminated Rias' walk into the dark cave, emitting from one of the 9 tails of her companion. Rias had to wonder at her situation, it was fairly odd from what she understood about familiars. Perhaps the fox wanted to test her. Make her perform some task or rite of passage. Maybe it had a family back here that needed her help. Maybe it wanted to eat her away from everything else. All contemplation stopped as the two beings approached what seemed to be the end of the cave, however. There was a boy in the wall. Well, not so much a boy as a young man. He was wrapped in red crystal, his clothes were torn and lightly charred. His right arm wasn't visible, but that may just be from the angle in which he sat embedded in the wall. He had a serene look on his face, even as he lay floating in the exotic gem. I have brought you here in hopes you could help him. A voice resounded through the cave, causing Rias to jump and release a slight scream. She turned her head every which way before finally settling on the fox. Can you talk? Not in the most conventional of ways, came the voice, ever as the fox only stared back at her intently. Telepathy? Rias questioned. The fox hadn't moved its maw, so that was the only option Rias could think of. You are quite astute for one so young. The fox approached the frozen man and laid before him. This man is my friend. I have spent the last weeks trying to awaken him, but it seems my powers can no longer reach him. As of now, he remains in a sort of stasis, until I can find some power to jolt his system. I have been looking for any options. The fox looked at Rias as he said this, and from the look of the girl's face, she was beginning to understand. You need my help. Rias spoke softly. Seeing the nod she received, she felt compelled to ask, but how can I help? I don't know much medical magic. You are a devil. Are you not? I have spent weeks chasing off your kind. Those that were fully enveloped by your dark nature, are those that came off as half-breeds. I can sense the items in those half-bred, and seeing as you are pure in your darkness, I assume you have some way to do the procedure. You speak of the evil pieces. The fact the fox could even feel them in the humans and yokai that had been turned was incredible in of itself. I care not for the title you use. Can you do it? Yes. As heir to the house of Grimoire, I have already received my evil pieces. Rias walked forward and placed a hand on the large red gem, taking in the boy's features. Why should I help this man? Rias spoke. This was no small favor that was being asked of her, after all. I have looked into your heart, child. I see the innocence and want to help others that my partner shares. It is why I led you here instead of chasing you out of my domain. He is a good person, then. I have seen so few like him in my many years. I ask this favor knowing he may hate me for it. I understand this will tie him to you, in more ways than one. He has never been one pleased by others making choices for him. I just don't want his light to fade. Rias looked at the fox in no small wonder. He spoke of this man with a kind of reverence, like he was the one truth of the world. Why would you go so far for him? She had to know before she could decide. I have been known throughout the ages as a mindless beast. Something to be feared, hated. In those years, I learned to do the same. Anger, fear, hate. Those feelings filled my heart and darkened my view of the world and the people in it. Naruto. He saw something else in me. Something good. It wasn't always that way, but he has earned my faith and trust. If it means earning his ire to save his life. You really look up to him. The fox laid on its front paws at the foot of the gem, a certain resignation at the proclamation. Naruto. Rias looked at the boy once more, a sort of warmth spreading in her heart. Something about him called out to her. Something she wanted to trust and cherish. Something pure. With a wave of her hand, a chess piece appeared. It was a stylized after a queen. It held archaic symbols running up and down its length. A mutated queen. A rarity in devil society. I will help you. I can provide you with this queen piece, but I can't assure you of the outcome. Bring other beings back from the dead is what these pieces were designed around. I'm not sure what will happen with him only being in a pseudo-coma. Rias slowly placed the piece against the red gem. I'm not even sure if it will be strong enough to help him. The powers of the evil pieces is directly related to how strong the king, me in this instant, is. If he is strong enough to make a friend out of a Kyuubi, I will allow the trinket to bind with him, giving a fraction of my own power to increase its accessibility. Together, that should be enough to awaken him. Rias looked at the fox for a moment, her decision already made. All right, I will help you. What is his full name? She asked as the piece made contact. Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. In the name of the House of Grimoire, I command thee. Rise and live life anew as a devil, Naruto Uzumaki. Rias poured a portion of her magic into the piece, and a red glow filled the cavern. A yellow light enveloped the piece as it slowly sank into the gem. Rias covered her eyes as the light became blinding, and a loud crack rang throughout the cave. Naruto was mildly surprised when he began to feel. Surely death meant no sense of touch, right? He'd just be a soul floating in the pure land based on the conventional religions of the elemental nations. So why the hell was his back so sore? Itai. Who knew death would ache so much? His throat felt hoarse, rough from disuse. He lifted a hand and slowly rubbed his face, before dragging it through his hair. A soft gasp made him freeze. Wait a second. Slowly, Naruto opened his eyes, the dim light quickly allowing his eyes to adjust. The blur in his vision faded, and a short red-headed girl filled his sight. Holy shit. Mom. Naruto rubbed his eyes, his left hand pinching at the bridge of his nose. There no way that was the child version of his mom. Blinking once more as he sat up, the girl approached him slowly. Are you okay, Naruto? She spoke slowly, hesitantly. Naruto flashed a cheesy smile. Yeah. Why do you ask? Wait, how do you know my name? He replied. This. Fox told me. And I asked because, well. Rias pointed to his right, a look of shock and slight sadness on her face. Fox. Naruto looked around, before realizing the weight on his lap. Casting his eyes down, he came face to face with the familiar vision of Kurama. Only a lot smaller. What? What? Naruto tried to vocalize his surprise, only to feel totally tongue-tied. It's good to have you back, partner. The sorely missed gravelly tone of his friend and partner almost made Naruto jump. How? I don't. What's going on? Where are we? How are you out of the seal? Why aren't I dead? Naruto fired off even as he moved to wrap his arms around the large fox laying across his legs. Arm. Naruto stopped, staring at the stump of his right hand. Oh, so that's what the girl meant. The fight with Sasuke came back in a flash, and the falling from the sky. That must mean the place Sasuke sent him was a different world altogether. Naruto just pushed it to the back of his mind, and finished his movement, wrapping his arms around Kurama's neck. You did it, man. You really did it. You saved us. He spoke softly, gratitude flowing with his words. Rias stared on in both amazement and joy. This man brushed off the missing arm like nothing, but clung to the fox and thanked it as if it was the most important thing in the world. She may not know much about him. But the words he spoke were genuine from what she could feel. He really was grateful for the fox being with him. Kurama tried not to tear up, even as Naruto held him and sang his praises. It had been so very long since he had last been hugged, long before even his first sealing. The words that tumbled from Naruto made him feel light, peaceful, important. It wasn't just me, Naruto. This young girl, Rias, provided me with the power necessary to bring you back to the waking world. Naruto leaned back from the fox, casting his eyes to the girl once more. He smiled brightly, before beckoning for her to come forward. Thank you, Rias-chan. I must have been pretty bad off if Kurama need help. Usually we make do with our individual skills, but if he was worried enough to ask for help, it says a lot about what my state was. And what kind of person you are. Naruto's smile softened considerably. For him to ask you. You must be a very good girl. Rias for her part just blushed deeper and deeper, even more so when Naruto's left hand dropped into the top of her head and lightly tousled her hair, a soft grin on his lips. Usually she hated when people did that. But this felt. Rias quickly stepped back and coughed into her hand, trying to force her blush down. Naruto looked confused for a moment, wondering if he had done something wrong. Why yes, well, Kurama was very adamant about your survival. I couldn't just leave you to an unknown fate. Rias looked Naruto in the eye, steeling herself for the coming conversation. With a gulp she soldiered on. As it stands, you may not be happy with which the means of your survival were ensured. I am a devil, you see. I used my queen to act as a catalyst in which Kurama-san could awaken you. Naruto just tilted his head, going to scratch his head, only to deadpan at his still missing right hand. That's gonna get annoying. What do you mean by devil, Rias-chan? And what's a queen piece? Naruto asks, turning his focus back on the red head. A devil is a being born of the Lilith bloodline, and inhabitants of both earth and hell. We have special abilities that allow for the use of magic and inherited powers. Think human, but everyone has the ability of chakra and even a few hold bloodline limits. Kurama chimed in, knowing Naruto would still be confused. Ah, that makes sense. Though I still don't understand why that would upset me. For the sake of the dwindling devil population after a series of conflicts. Ajuka Beelzebub, one of the four Mao created the evil peace system. This allows normal humans and yokai to be turned into devils. It uses the pieces from the game known as chess and allows for a maximum of 15 uses. The ones that become devils this way are known as peerage members and are bound to the one that owns the pieces. Known as the king. Rias stopped to take a small breath, and also calculate Naruto's serious expression. I see. I take it you used one of these pieces on me, and have bound me in the same way. Naruto spoke, closing his eyes in concentration, feeling throughout his energy, he found a blip. Something new, different. Yes, I can feel it. A small part of my chakra has been changed. And I can feel a pull to your energy signature. Naruto nodded finally. All right, what's else? Rias just blinked in surprise, before turning to Kurama. I thought you said he'd be upset. Kurama just shook lightly, as if to laugh. Well, he is unpredictable. I can't be upset at you two doing your utmost to save me. Honestly, I'm just kind of grateful. Naruto spoke, smiling and rubbing the back off his head with his left hand. Rias just stood there in a bit of shock. For someone to be so accepting of being forcefully turned was both uncommon and plain weird to her. She coughed into her hand once more, seeing how the other two in the cave were looking at her oddly. Yes. I suppose I should explain as much as I can, so you aren't shocked for what's to come. For a kid, you're pretty smart, ya know. Naruto laughed as he adjusted his seated position for the upcoming information dump. Considering what an idiot you can be, maybe it's good you wound up here. Kurama snarked in good nature, leaning his head into Naruto's lap. Kurama, that's not nice. Naruto whined, even as his hand reached down to stroke Kurama's head. Mean old fox. Rias looked at the two before sighing and taking a seat as well. Right. This may take a while. And so, she explained all about the world she had grown up in. Naruto stared out of the bay window as moonlight flooded the room. It hadn't taken long for Rias' family to find them after Kurama led them from his so-called dead zone. Thought that meeting was interesting. Rias-tan. Naruto suppressed a shudder. It was my territory. What else would you call it? Kurama spoke, interrupting Naruto's reminiscing. Naruto gave a chuckle. Good point, buddy. He spoke softly. The fox was laying just below the couch he was sat upon. Naruto turned and surveyed the room he was currently occupying, taking in the grandiose portrayal of wealth. A large king-sized canopy bed, frame crafted from a fine ebony wood. Sheer silk curtains hung over the support banisters. A deep red satin bed spread laying in wait to wrap the sleeper in a loving embrace. What could be thousands of dollars in a bed? It actually sickened Naruto a little. This was one of the guest rooms. What must the regular tenants sleep in? It's why he found himself awake now. He wasn't used to such luxury. It was too soft. Too much. It was why he opted for the couch. Still comfortable, sure, but less so than the air that was the bed. You do know you don't have to stay here, right? Kurama chimed. That started Naruto a bit. He had some questions for the fox about this whole situation, now that it struck him. What are you talking about? According to Rias, if I run off, it'll make me a criminal. And some grossly deformed monster. Naruto shot back with a shudder. No, she said resurrected devils who run from their king would grow grotesque. You, however, are still human. Kurama responded matter-of-factly. What do you mean? Didn't you use her queen piece to turn me? Naruto spoke, a slight accusation coloring his tone, even as he cast his eyes to his lifelong partner. Who do I look like, boy? Do you seriously think I would allow someone any kind of power over you, after all you did to protect me? The fox scoffed, the nerve of this human. I needed something from this world to reach you. When I made that shell around you, I died. I spent weeks reforming in the familiar forest, then sought out the cave in which you had become embedded. Wait, you died? Kurama, why would you do that? Naruto tried to keep from shouting outright, even as he shot to his feet. This was. Why? It was either me, or both of us. I reform after death, using the chakra of the world. You, Naruto, do not. Had you died, I would have died anyway. It was the best option. Kurama spoke clinically. He had lived for thousands of years. Did Naruto really not trust him to have some kind of a plan? Kurama felt a hand land between his ears, and he lifted his head to look at the blonde standing over him. Kurama, it's not that. I never want people sacrificing themselves for me. The fact that you did. A soft sob escaped Naruto. He knew he was being silly, the fox was right there. But that kind of dedication. Oh, quite, you're blubbering. The fox shook its head, even as a little warmth filled his heart. Having someone cry over you was kinda nice, if a bit embarrassing. It all worked out like I thought it would, so it's fine. Anyway, when I found you, I couldn't bring you out on my own. The chakra of this world is tainted, different. I couldn't breach the shell of my old chakra. Naruto whipped his eyes a little, so that's why you needed the evil piece. Something to act as a bridge between your new chakra and my body. Exactly. Because my old chakra was made from the nature chakra of our old world, the chakra I have gathered in this world wasn't compatible. The evil piece was never actually used, just acted as a catalyst. The fact that no one here had realized that is incredible to say the least. Kurama spoke with a huff. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. The fox singing praises. Incredible how? Incredibly stupid. Ah, there it was. So then what is that little new addition to my chakra signature? I'm sure you've felt it too, haven't you? Naruto asks, a new questioning gaze forming on his face. That is actually a good question. It could be the taint of this world's nature chakra flowing from me to your coils. It could be some part of that girl that was left over from using her piece. It could just be something weird with you. Wouldn't be the first time. Kurama snarked. Naruto dealt with more weird shit on a daily basis than most people did in their entire lives. Naruto sat back down and leaned into the cushions of the couch, his left hand dragging through his hair. If he was tied to Rias in any way, he couldn't just up and disappear. He'd never been able to just break bonds like that. So what should we do then? If we run off, Rias will think we abandoned her, and since you tricked the poor girl in the first place. Naruto trailed off. He should have realized Kurama wouldn't give in to something that easily. He'd been with the fox for almost 18 years. Tell her the truth then. I don't care. You're back. I'm regaining my lost power. It's a win-win in my book. Kurama flopped back down, closing his eyes. Naruto looked at the fox, a new question springing to his mind. Ya no. You being this small makes sense now. If you only just started to regain your yin and yang chakra. But something is still bothering me. In a way, Naruto supposed that made the most sense. When his old man combined the two halves of Kurama's chakra, the fox had almost tripled in size. What's that brat? Kurama opened one eye and cast it up to Naruto. How come you let Rias ride you on the way back from the forest? Naruto spoke with a teasing smile. You shut up. Kurama shouted even as Naruto laughed. Deny it all he wanted. Naruto knew Kurama liked Rias, if only a little. Naruto walked into the dining room of the Gremory estate, lavish not even the beginning of how he would describe the masterfully crafted seating and utensils. This really was like being in a whole new world. After he had managed a scarce few hours of sleep, he had decided to explore, hoping to learn more about the people whose daughter he had saved. A soft scoff left Naruto's lips. He'd been laid up in a cocoon of high-density chakra. Not much saving to be done that way. He was disappointed Kurama wasn't with him at the moment, the fox wanting to sleep more, and apparently regain more of the chakra from the world. Naruto stopped walking at the and put a hand to his chin. Come to think of it. How was Kurama able to form in this world anyway? Are there other beings like him? Or maybe he is just some form of conscious that can gather chakra to psychically manifest. Naruto squeezed his eyes tightly in thought, something he wasn't well known for in the first place. His brain was starting to hurt. So many questions, so few answers. Honestly, this whole thing was a clusterfuck. Someone seems to be troubled. A melodic voice reaches his ears, causing Naruto to spin in place. A woman stood in the doorway, elegantly dressed in a white gown that accented her curves. 2 red gems sat on her neck, one in a choker, and one in a sliver necklace. That along with her light brown hair made her purple eyes just pop. She was honestly, and unequivocally attractive in Naruto's modest opinion. She was also lady of the Gremory house. Venelana Gremory, née Baal, a powerful devil, and Rias' mother. She wore a slight smile, taking a bit of pleasure in making the young man her daughter brought home jump. That sounds much more inappropriate in my head than I meant it to. Shaking her head slightly, she took in Naruto's slightly put out features. Good morning, Naruto-san. It's good to see you up so early. Naruto just scratched his head with his left hand, a small sweat drop sliding down his face while he released a nervous chuckle. Jesus Christ, she came out of nowhere. Rias never said her mom was a ninja. I wouldn't get too used to it. I usually sleep till around 10, just with all the new information and learning all I did yesterday. Naruto trailed off as he took in the dining hall once more. I see. I suppose someone in your unique position would be a bit hard up on sleep. Venelana spoke softly. After Searsex had returned with an extra party member, questions had flown a mile a minute. At the time, Naruto hadn't felt the need to hide too much about how they met from everyone, so the truth about where he was from and how he came to be a guest had been revealed to the family. At the time, everyone assumed the same as him, he was Rias' new queen. Naruto blanched. That's right. I still need to tell them. I wanted to thank you one more time, Naruto-san. Venelana spoke softly as she walked closer to him, her hands clasped in front of her. What for Gremory-sama? A disrespectful brat he may be, but this was Rias' mom. She seemed nice enough, and with the news he'd be telling her and others later, best to try and butter her up. You did save my little girl, and please call me Venelana. The lovely devil spoke. She stopped a few feet from Naruto, a small smile on her face, gratitude clear in her eyes. I wouldn't go that far. Naruto started, his hand once more finding his hair as he glanced away nervously. Truth of the matter is, if Rias hadn't come along, I'd still be stuck in that crystal. But you escorted a young girl from a very dangerous place, you could have left her, or worse, hurt her yourself. Venelana spoke resolutely. She may be a kind woman, but she was wise to the world. Being turned into a queen, Naruto could have slaughtered her little girl and left. It had happened before to young devils getting ahead of themselves. She could see he was a kind man, but the possibility was there. Yeah, that never woulda happened. Naruto spoke with a scowl. Rias is a good girl. The fact she went out of her way to help a stranger, even if she was kinda tricked, speaks a lot for her character. I owe her a debt, ya know. I couldn't just abandon her. Naruto smiled lightly, having already made up his mind on what he was going to do. Rias was a good girl. Given the tenuous peace that was currently being held, her position as an heiress, and his own hero complex, he wouldn't leave. Besides, Ria's family was pretty nice. Venelana, for her part, looked at Naruto with a small sense of wonder. Most people forcibly held a grudge against the perpetrator, yet he brushed it off without a complaint. Aren't you worried about what this means for you? My daughter did force you into indentured servitude, for lack of a better word. Venelana asked as she narrowed her eyes slightly. She wanted to buy this mon's kind act, but she knew people that could act this way, only to show their true colors in private. Cruelty wore a mask of kindness, and she would burn this world to the ground before she let such a man be alone with her little devil. Actually, there is something about that you guys should know. Naruto started slowly. He walked over to the long dining table and sat down with a soft plop. This would be a tense conversation, he could already tell. What do you mean? Venelana's tone took a harsh note, already assuming the worst. Would you be able to get everyone together? This is gonna be a long conversation, and I don't wanna have it more times than necessary. Naruto sighed. He could already feel the anger rolling off the woman. He didn't blame her honestly. He was acting fairly suspicious, and considering the little he knew about devil society, that could be seen as a threat. Venelana was silent for a moment, weighing the young man before her, her eyes taking in everything about him. Quote. Give me a few moments. And that's about as much as I know. Naruto rounded off as he took up the fine glass of tea that had been brought in by the house servants. Each of the others at the table seemed a bit alarmed and shocked, not that he was surprised. This seemed to set a new precedent. They were probably as confused as he was. Well, that certainly is an interesting problem. Though not necessarily a bad thing. This means Ria still has a full set of evil pieces, and she gained a powerful ally, if I may be so bold. Zeodicus Grimori spoke, a hand stroking the light stubble of a beard on his face. Much like his son, Zeodicus is a tall man, long red hair spilling from his head. He wore an expensive-looking suit, the blazer of which currently rested on the back of his chair. The white and gold colors truly complemented both his blue eyes, as well as alerted others to his high status in society. As the Duke of Grimori, Naruto really wasn't shocked. If what you say is true, you may have just found a way to save thousands of people without the need to make them half-devils. Sirzex spoke, a strange look passing over his face. The pillars will be in an uproar if they find out about this. Not exactly, Naruto replied, halting Sirzek's train of thought. Kurama's chakra is special. Even the gem I was encased in was made of his old chakra, solidified as it was. It helped heal my more grievous injuries, no doubt, but I have my own healing factor. I never actually died. Think of what happened as a cold bucket of water on a sleeping bum. Naruto nodded to himself at his brilliant analogy, even as the other four occupants of the room sweat dropped. So, does that mean you'll be leaving? Ria spoke softly. That made her feel sad. She didn't want the blonde to go. Something about him called to her. Made her feel safe. Not at all. I do still owe you. Without your help, Kurama would never have been able to breach the shell, well, not for a long time anyway. Who knows what more time in the jewel would have done to me, haha. Naruto smiled at Rias. The poor girl had seemed on the edge of tears the whole conversation. It was best to put her at ease now. That does lead to a new problem. How do we explain your presence here? While your energy signature doesn't seem human, someone looking hard enough would realize you aren't a half-devil either. Venelana spoke, her own concern for what this could mean for her daughter weighing on her mind. The number of people that would try to get at Naruto for his difference, through Rias, would be numerous. Information had already spread about the strange blonde at the Grimori Manor, the fact he returned with Sirzex and his little sister, someone with a full set of evil pieces, meant the rumors were out in force. That is a concern. Zeodicus agreed, closing his eyes in thought. Naruto leaned back in his chair, his own thought process going to work. That was a pickle. If Naruto was the only person like him anywhere in this world, the crazies would come out of the woodwork for him. Naruto hung his head in defeat. Sometimes, being awesome sucked. Couldn't we hire him as a butler? Or as a bodyguard perhaps? All eyes turned to Sirzex, questions ringing in their gaze. We don't necessarily have to alert anyone of this development. I would like Ajuka to take a look at you. A human with chakra is just wow. Not to mention this additional energy you mentioned. He may be able to divine what it is. That might actually work. Naruto spoke, his hand scratching his chin. It would be good for Rias-chan. Venelana consented begrudgingly, still holding some reservations. You did say you had some experience with such affairs. As a ninja was it? People would assume you are a peerage member unless they truly looked into it, and you could pay off your so-called debt to little Rias. Zeodicus thought it was a splendid idea. After the mess in the familiar forest, he was tempted to have his own butler keep an eye on Rias till she was able to take care of herself. Not to mention Rias-tan seems quite taken with you, Naruto-san. We can provide room and board, even a small stipend for personal expenses. Out of my own pocket if necessary. Sirzex spoke, pointedly ignoring the blush and glare Rias pointed his way. She wasn't taken with him. He was just nice. I think it's a good idea. Naruto can stay nearby. He can learn more about this world, and you guys don't have to worry about me being in danger. Rias spoke, after suppressing the blush that had appeared on her face. Stupid Oni-sama. I'm not sure, Rias-chan. Are you strong enough to protect Rias from any danger? Venelana asked pointedly. It was one thing when they assumed her was a queen, with just his base abilities, she wasn't so convinced. Naruto smirked, a flash of something appearing in his eyes. How about I give you guys a demonstration? Got anywhere that won't be missed? His tone sure and full of himself. We can make a pocket dimension for you to show off your skills. Naruto stood, twisting his neck and being rewarded with a sharp pop. Then let's do this. Naruto took in the surrounding area with a sense of wonder. It was exactly like the mountain range that he had pasted through on his original trip into the Grimoire home. The only difference he could find was the sky being a off shade of purple. A little odd, but not something he couldn't get over. Right then, what do you want to see first? I have a lot of tricks. Or would you like me to just go full tilt? Naruto asked as he stretched lightly. While he couldn't truly go all out without Kurama, Sage Mode should be more than enough to prove his skills. Come to think of it, can Kurama and I still bond the same way? This is your job interview. Zeodicus spoke with a chuckle. Please, let as you wish. Naruto stopped and tapped a finger on his chin. Might as well go for broke and end this early. He sat down and slowed his breathing, stilled his movements. For a moment, Venelana and Zeodicus were confused, not understanding what the blonde youth was up to. Neither noticed the slight narrowing of Sirzek's eyes as he took in Naruto's posture and sat of trance. As that, a sharp gasp drew the eyes of the adults to Rias, whose eyes were wide in amazement. Something she seemed to ignore. She could feel everything. It was like she could hear the bugs in the soil, taste the wind. Everything was becoming so crisp and clear. Ah, it feels good to get back in the swing of things. Naruto's voice cut everyone back over to his now standing form. Something about him was different. Something ancient, primal, something as old as the world itself. I was right. He is a sage. Sirzex thought to himself in befuddlement. His younger sister had saved a sage. A person known as a living god, able to bend the world to their will. This was. What is this feeling? Venelana spoke as she took a half step back in shock. So much strength and power rolled off Naruto in waves, it was thrilling. I can't believe it. That boy, a sage at so young. Zeodicus spoke in awe. Sages were nothing new to their world, but to see one so young, and human no less, was unheard of. It seemed Rias had the devil's luck. This is the first form of my sage mode. Like this, my senses, speed, strength, and cognitive abilities are all enhanced past regular levels. Naruto spoke, preening under the gazes being thrown his way. First form. Sirzex stumbled as he spoke. Yeah, after this is Nine Tails Sage Mode, when me and Kurama bond and combine our power, then there is Sage of Six Paths Mode, something even greater. I still don't fully have the hang of that one, but because of it I have an alignment to every chakra nature, and an understanding of all things chakra related. It also made me a master of chakra transfusion. Pretty cool, huh? Naruto bragged, even as he released the natural energy back into the world. Kurama was right, something about this world was tainted. He could look into it later. A sharp breath made everyone once more look at Rias, who looked as if she had just come down from some high. Her eyelids dipped closed slowly and she was slightly swaying on her feet. A hand on her shoulder caused her to start in surprise, her eyes landing on Naruto's concerned face. Rias. Are you okay? He asked softly. All the poor girl could do was nod. It seemed the bond he spoke of was real. She had felt it. The power, the warmth of nature. It was intoxicating. Still a bit concerned, Naruto knelt down and started looking Rias over, searching for any visible injury. Well, dear, what do you think? Zeoticus spoke to his wife softly, watching Naruto carefully. He may trust the boy a little, but that was still his little girl. Naruto, Venilana called out, pulling the two youngest individuals' attention to her. Will you protect my daughter? From any foe or threat? To keep her safe and happy no matter what, on pain of death. She spoke seriously, her eyes growing slightly cold. This was important. She needed to know. I would do that anyway. Naruto spoke, lightly ruffling Rias' hair. Rias. All kids deserve to be protected. To be cared for. Even if I didn't get to stay here, I would do my best to protect her. He ended with a smile. Rias blushed and took a particular interest in the ground. Her parents loved her, and she had a doting older brother, but hearing Naruto say those words made her feel special. Like they were only for her. Rias. Not the heir to the house of Grimoire. Venilana stared at the two for a moment, before her features relaxed in a smile. This boy would be a good influence on her little girl, she could tell. Well, need to get you some new clothes. Perhaps a uniform of some kind. You will be representing the Grimoire name after all. Venilana spoke with a small grin, turning on her heel, she allowed the barrier to fall away, revealing the yard of the Grimoire estate. Quote. This means shopping, doesn't it? Naruto spoke with a slightly pale face. Clothes shopping. With a woman. Oh god, the flashbacks. Searsex gave a small pained smile in camaraderie. He knew this young Mon's pain all too well. Searsex-sama, isn't this Ansi so cute? He loved his wife. He did, but shopping with her was an act of self-hate. Satan forbid he ever actually tell her that. Naruto slowly ran his hands across Kurama's head, gliding his fingers through the horse-sized fox's fur. His blue eyes gazed out the bay window of his bedroom and took in the city below. It was dusk, the orange and reds of the sky painting a beautiful canvas that really just drew his eyes in. A feeling of melancholy overtook him. Was Konoha seeing a beautiful evening as well? Were his friends free? Did Sasuke survive? Why do you continue to think of those insects, brat? Kurama's voice breaks into Naruto's thoughts like an axe through a tree. The blonde stops his slow menstruations, casting his eyes to the fox head in his lap. They're still precious to me, Kurama. Even if I'm not near them. I can't help but miss them. Naruto spoke with a sad smile. It had been 2 years since waking in that cave. 2 years since becoming Rias' guardian. 2 years since he last saw his friends. It hadn't been all bad. The relationship Rias and he shared could be akin to family. She hung on to his words like a nun to the Bible. The irony of which was not lost to him either. A few friends here and there had been made, and more than a few fights had been won, but still, his thoughts lingered on his home. You are home. Here. This is where you exist and this is where we call home. Kurama spoke, and Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. The fox acted hard and unyielding, but time free of its cage and in an environment of companionship and mutual trust had softened the biju. Naruto knew Kurama was only saying these words to knock him out of his funk. I know that, Ku. I love the life I have here, I do, but still, my friends were as much a part of my life as you are. Would you want me to forget about you if we were separated? The ninja grinned as the fox stiffened under his hand. Yeah, that's what he thought. No one wants to be forgotten. The fox raised its head from Naruto's lap and gave him a peculiar look. Could you forget about me? About anyone? The fox asked in a voice that was becoming all too welcome in the blonde's opinion. Soft, understanding. Naruto wrapped his arms around the fox's neck, making sure to not lock any of the fur in the articulated joints of his prosthetic. 2 years from home, with no new way to make it back. I haven't forgotten about them, have I? Kurama relaxed into Naruto's arms, a certain comfort rolling off both of them. I could never forget the one person that always had my back. Haha, even if you didn't want to. Naruto chuckled as a gravelly laugh escaped the fox. Over their time in this world, Kurama and Naruto had become kin to brothers, or something of that nature since neither the fox or Naruto knew the Biju's gender. They supported each other and helped where they could. Kurama would at times act as Rias' guard in Naruto's stead, and Naruto would act as Kurama's protection whenever someone got too close to the truth. It hadn't been easy hiding the truth about Naruto's humanity or Kurama's nature as a walking natural disaster. But so far, nothing had really come of it. The Grimoire family had supported the two fully, and even now kept Naruto under their employ as their head of security. Rias was still his charge, and if the girl was Axe, she would have it no other way. I can still sense negativity. Whenever you think of your friends, things darken a bit. The fox confessed, revealing in the warmth Naruto provided. It hated seeing the world darken when Naruto was involved. Kurama could feel the taint in the world, the anger humanity and the supernatural all lived in. Naruto was like a beacon. Like the sun itself walking the earth. Bright, kind, compassionate. When the blonde thought of the world he left behind, his nature darkened ever so slightly and it physically hurt the fox. I know, Ku. I'm sorry about that, but it's normal. You're still coming to terms with this stuff, but being sad is a part of reality. Naruto rubbed his hand along the fox's back, speaking softly, yearning to make the fox understand. They never talked about it, but Naruto would often feel the thoughts plaguing him. He wouldn't be around forever. One day, he would pass on and the fox would have to move on. Sadness isn't a weakness, and it isn't a bad thing. It means we lost something, yes, but it also means we enjoyed something enough to miss it when it's gone. It was a grim topic, for sure, but it haunted Naruto during the dying light of the day. What would the fox do when he was gone? He didn't know, he just hoped he could make Kurama feel attached to something else to lessen the blow. Why won't you just accept the girl's offer? Kurama spoke, hating itself for its own weakness. For how pleading it sounded to its own ears. Ho ho, so Rias has talked to you. Naruto laughed as he released the fox from his hug. The last few days had seen almost everyone at odds with Naruto. The bandages around his chest being the cause. An assailant had attacked Rias on her way to her classes in Ku, the town they had taken residence in early last year. She wanted to attend an all-female academy in the city limits. Her arguments had been accepted by her parents to allow her to experience the human world. The fact that the Grimoire and Citri families shared the city as a territory just acted as icing on the cake. Naruto staying as a live-in brother would act as his cover finally convinced them. As they traveled by foot, Naruto acting as a kind older brother walking his Imouto and her friend to school, a Rouge priest had attacked. Something that usually wouldn't be a problem for Naruto, he just hadn't expected the second knife, and it had caught him in the chest. To say everyone was extremely put out by it was an understatement. It had taken hours to convince Circex not to lay waste to the churches in the area. After that, Rias had begged, demanded even, that Naruto become a reincarnated devil. It would increase his vitality and durability, so something like this would never happen again. The blonde has promptly refused. My humanity is something that defines me, Rias. How could I possibly give that up? It had been much the same from the rest of the girl's family. Even the redhead's queen had been insistent on Naruto becoming a half-devil. Now even Kurama was in on it. I know it was scary, Ku. You could have died. Kurama cut off, a pleading look on the fox's face. I stopped that girl from turning you before because I knew you would be upset if it was done without your permission, but this is different. You could have died and there would be nothing I could have done to help. The fox turned its head away. Ever since their separation, Naruto's healing factor had decreased. It was still nothing to scoff at, but no longer could the blonde act like a tank and just walk off the damage. For the first time, Naruto was susceptible to damage. Kurama could sync with him, give him chakra and assist him in his six paths mode, but the fox couldn't heal him anymore. Its chakra would now do more harm than good. All the power in the world, and the fox could only help Naruto by passing on gathering natural chakra and allowing Naruto to transfer it to himself. It hated not being able to help its one friend. It's okay, Kurama. Naruto turned the fox's head back towards him, a smile, bright and cheery, on his face. He just surprised me is all. It won't happen again, especially not with that guy. A soft chuckle escaped the blonde. He honestly felt a little bad for the attacker. Rias' family had not been kind to the man. Naruto had disabled him after the knife slipped through his ribs, and then had Rias teleport all four of them to the Grimoire Mansion. He wasn't sure what happened to the man after that, being fussed over by Rias and her mother, but the look on Ziotica's face had been terrifying to say the least. Why can't you just give in even once? The fox sighed, knowing Naruto was stubborn to a fault. Who do I look like to you? Naruto laughed as he slapped his chest with his hand, biting back a wince. A knock drew both of their attention to the door, and after a soft, "Come in," the door opened to reveal a young girl with long black hair. She wore a modified outfit remnant of Shinto priestess. A red haori was draped across her shoulders and black hakama hid her legs. She was certainly cute, with soft features and slightly sleepy, violet eyes. Naruto-sama, Lord Lucifer asked me to retrieve you. She spoke softly, clasping her hands in front of her waist, bowing slightly. Naruto groaned as he stood from the couch, an arm wrapping over Kurama's neck to help him up. Another day or two and he should be right as rain, but for now, he had to rely on others more than he would like. Akeno, seriously, how many times do I have to tell you not to call me that? Naruto gave the girl an exasperated look. At least once more, Naruto-sama. Akeno spoke, a smile breaking her lips, even as her eyes lingered on the bandages. Do you require assistance, Naruto-sama? Akeno made to step forward, but Naruto waves her off, a sigh leaving his lips. It's fine, Akeno. Kurama's got me. What's going on anyway? Last time I went downstairs, Grafia and Rias almost went ballistic. It wasn't far from the truth. Rias had been quite upset due to this whole clusterfuck and demanded he rest and allow them to take care of him, them being her primarily. Grafia has been more reserved in her disapproval, but no less scary. That woman's glare could freeze ice. I'm not sure, Naruto-sama. He said that it was most important and everyone should be gathered. Akeno places a hand on her cheek, a look of contemplation crossing her face. Naruto hung his head. He knew she was doing it just to get a rise out of him, but damn it if it didn't bother him. Formalities has never been his thing and he got enough of them whenever the Grimoire family held or were invited to a formal function. He slowly slid on an orange and black haori over top the loose kimono he had on, wincing only slightly as his wound made its presence known once more. Well, Naruto said as he leaned against the massive frame of Kurama once more, let's go see what all the fuss is about. KOQ. Naruto found himself at a loss for words. Abject confusion was clear on his face. Rias. Check. Thought from the was she had glanced at him, only to go back to her confusing antics spoke to her still being upset with him. Searsex and Grafia. Double check. Though Grafia seemed too busy attempting to punish the great Mao, to notice him, with said Mao crying on the floor. Venelena and Zioticus. Double check there as well. They at least threw him a smile and nod at his entrance, however. Chibi white-haired cat girl that was currently being cuddled and squeezed by Rias with a blank look on her face while dressed in rags. Check. What the hell is all this? Naruto spoke, drawing all eyes to him. Grafia released Searsex, only to walk directly in front of Naruto and stare him in the eye. It made the blonde incredibly uncomfortable, and it didn't help that she just stared at him for a whole 10 seconds. Naruto-sama, damn it Grafia, how many times? Why are you not resting as was directed? The maid uniform wearing Queen Axe, more demanded, in a bland tone. Naruto gave the silver-haired wife of Searsex a deadpan look before jerking a thumb towards Akeno. Little Miss Grafia copycat here, said Searsex wanted me down here. Grafia glanced toward the black-haired girl, filing the copycat name away for later, then back towards her husband. Lucifer-sama, you are aware of Naruto-sama's current condition, are you not? Yes indeed I am Grafia-chan. However, Naruto approached Venelena and Zioticus as Searsex attempted to avoid the couch, again. What the hell was all that? Naruto asked the lord and lady of the house. Venelena giggles into her hand demurely, a soft smile on her face. Our son had just introduced our young guest to Rias, when she basically clomped the poor dear. Searsex was upset that Rias didn't hug him instead. Zioticus shook his head, a sigh leaving his lips. Sometimes he wondered where he went wrong with that boy. It had to have been the Civil War. War bends people in odd ways. Naruto looked over to the little girl in the midst of the Grimoire family, the blank look still firmly in place, her yellow eyes seeming completely hollow. Kurama looked out of the corner of its eye as it felt Naruto grip its fur a bit too tightly. Naruto stepped toward the young girl, leaving the support of Kurama behind. Just 3 whole steps, no problem really. He knelt down and stared the young girl in the eyes, never noticing as the noise of the room quieted. Hello. My name is Naruto. What's your name? He asked softly, searching for something in the young girl's face. She stared back at him. Through him really, I don't have a name. She replied softly. Come now. Everyone has a name, even if it's one we give ourselves. Naruto smiled softly, holding a fist out to the girl. She looked at the extended fist in confusion, raising her own hand slowly. She glanced back into the kind blue eyes before her, unsure of what she should do. Like this, Naruto said softly, softly bumping his knuckles against the young girl's dainty hand. For the two, the world froze, a soft gasp escaping the girl. A life not her own flashed before her eyes, colors and faces, words and emotions. Sorrow, confusion, anger, acceptance, pride, loss, gratification, solidarity. Understanding. For Naruto, something similar was happening. He saw the girl's rough lifestyle, living on the streets with her sister. Sharon, Kuroka, street thieves, but happy. Then peace. Accepted into a family, happy. Then scorn, desperation, anger, confusion, emptiness. The color of the world became unmuted and Naruto let his hand fall, a sorrowful look filled his eyes. Sharon, is that your name? The girl shook her head quickly, her eyes misting. No, she gave me that name. That is not my name. The girl said strongly, her fist clenching at her sides. It wasn't. She abandoned her. She left her. She had no right to decide her name. A warm feeling wrapped the white-haired girl up, and she opened her eyes, the same kind blue, understanding eyes gazed back at her. A smile was on his face as he wrapped his orange and black haori around the girl and it broke her. She launched at Naruto and wrapped her arms around the blonde's neck, a harsh sob escaping the small girl. Naruto gently wrapped his arms around the girl, a calm shushing sound exiting his lips. Everyone else in the room took in the scene with confusion. What had Naruto done to receive that kind of reaction? They had just bumped knuckles. Rias was a bit put out, staring at Naruto putting Sharon's hair. No one else had been able to get any real reaction from the girl, even Rias fawning over her had been met with bland annoyance. How had he done that? Sirzex cleared his throat, pulling most everyone's attention to himself. Naruto slowly stood, the girl still wrapped in his arms. She's really light. Has she not eaten? I'm glad this is how everything has played out even without me explaining what's going on. Naruto looked at Sirzex, much the same as everyone else was. This is Sharon, younger sister of the newly marked SS rank Rouge Devil Kuroka. She was to be executed for her sister's crime of killing her former king. Gasps came from multiple sources around the room, even as Sharon tightened her arms around Naruto's neck. Naruto slightly held the girl to his chest tighter, an angry scowl swallowing his usually kind visage. The hell she is. Naruto declares loudly, unheeded by the looks he received from Akino and Rias, the surprise in their eyes. As you can imagine, I am fully against this. I convinced the ruling family to place her under my care. She will be monitored by me, to ensure nothing like what happened with her sister, happens with her. Sirzex spoke resolutely, his eyes staring into Naruto's. I had hoped you would take her under your care, that or Rias reincarnate her. Rias looked at her older brother in shock. It seems she is already quite attached to you. Sirzex gave Naruto an appraising look, still trying to puzzle out how he got through to the stone-faced girl he had met earlier that day. Naruto felt his face soften at the request, glancing straight the girl in his arms, before nodding firmly. I'll leave it up to her to decide, but I'll keep an eye on her all the same. Not to monitor for a threat, but to make sure nothing happened. It seemed Sirzex understood his intent, based on the smile on his face. Come Grafia. We still have much to do. Naruto watched the two devils disappear in a flash of red. He turned to Venelena, about to speak, when she waved a hand. I'll have the room next to yours made up. Akano and Rias can take her into town tomorrow and take her shopping. Naruto smiles at her gratefully. He saw what she went through, saw her sorrow. He wanted to help her, any way he could. You used that, didn't you? Kurama's voice questioned him, making everyone look at the fox in confusion. Ha ha ha, you know me T0, oh well my friend. I saw that look in her eyes, the one I'm all too familiar with. Naruto allowed one hand to softly rub Sharon's hair, a little amazed at how soft it was considering the amount of grim covering her. Rias, would you be kind enough to come give me a hand? She'll need a bath when she wakes up. Naruto said as he turned and walked back towards his room. It was best the girl rest for a little, the emotional trauma obviously took its toll. Ah, see coming Naruto-kun. Rias said as she shook herself from her stupor, quickly giving chase to the tall blonde. Akano watched as everyone went their separate ways and had to smile softly. That was so like Naruto, always saving the damsel in distress. After all, he did save her. Flashback. She was running, her breath ragged and coming in heavy gasps, but she couldn't stop. They would catch her if she was still for even a second. They would kill her. She's over there. A voice called from further down the alley, causing a flash of panic in her heart. A sharp right made her crash into a wall, scraping along her left arm and causing her to bleed lightly. She pushed herself forward even as she winced. There was light at the end of the alley with people walking around. There. She could lose them in the crowd. So close. It's right there. Just a. Akano tripped over an upturned trash can, sliding along the ground roughly, her cry seemingly to go unnoticed to the people passing the alley. She tried to force herself back to her feet, only for a hand to grab her by her long black hair, another cry ripping from her lips as the grip tightened. With a quick toss backward, Akano felt more hands clasp onto her, ignoring her screams and struggles. No. Somebody. Help. She wasn't sure if she was actually saying it, but she was fighting, trying desperately to free herself. A heavy fist smashed into her face, making her halt. Stop moving, abomination. A voice growled above her. Ropes made their way around her form, the group of people preparing to take her away. Hot tears of anger filled her eyes, cursing the cause of all this. That man. That vile, cowardly man. It was his fault she was here. His fault she was hated. His fault she was hunted. Her bastard father. Oi, what the fuck do you think you're doing? A voice made all movement in the alley halt, and one man stood from the group, allowing Akano to see the one who shouted. Hair like the sun, dressed in orange and black. This is a the standing ring leader tried to speak, only to be cut off by a fist to the face. Flashback end. Akano would never forget the day Naruto saved her from her former family. It took some negotiating, but eventually, Rias was entrusted with keeping her in line. Over the last few months they had grown to be almost sisters, and Akano was eternally grateful to the blonde and red duo for shopping that day. She remembered asking them both why they did it a few weeks after everything was settled. What do you mean? A little girl was being tied up by a group of grown men. What kind of monster doesn't step in? Naruto had replied. Naruto-kun may be an idiot sometimes, oi. But he is an excellent judge of character. Plus it was accepting their terms, or having Naruto beat them all up. Was the exasperated reply she received from Rias. Yes, a strange duo, but people she would do anything for. Even accept a random newcomer that might be competition later. KOQ. Naruto laid a blanket over Sharon's sleeping form, her pristine white hair glowing in the moonlight. Rias had been kind enough to help the girl bath and let her borrow some clothes. He slid a hand through her hair softly, before making towards the exit at a slow jot. Naruto saw Rias waiting against the door, a strange look on her face. You okay, kiddo? Naruto snapped her out of her thinking with a quick ruffle of her hair, a scowl in her face as she slapped at his hand. Stop doing that, she muttered angrily. She was still annoyed at his insistence at not being turned, but something else was bothering her, and only he could explain it. What? What did you do earlier? With her? Why did she hug you like that? Rias asked as they walked down the hall side by side. A hand was over her heart, her eyes searching the floor. It wasn't normal for someone to react that way to someone, but she remembered how Akano had basically done the same thing after she had come around, and she, herself, had trusted Naruto almost instantaneously. Was he? Naruto chuckled lightly as a hand landed on the crown of her head, bringing them both to a stop. Ever since Kurama and me have been partners, have had this ability. I can connect my heart to another's through the bump of a fist. I feel what they feel, how their lives have been. And they see the same for me. Naruto looked out the window they had stopped by. I suppose you could say it's like a telepathic sacred gear. Because of Kurama, I can see another's pain, and understand them. Rias looked at the blonde for a moment, but, doesn't that mean you suffer the same as they have? That seemed so cruel. So heartless. I suppose you could say that, but you know a bit about my life before coming here. Naruto smiled at the girl, a kind dashing smile that seemed to make the stars sparkle brighter. If it means helping someone, I can endure. That's what it means to be a shinobi after all. It seemed cruel, harsh even, to give someone the power to live through the same suffering someone else had, but it also seemed so. Naruto. You're amazing. Rias heard herself whisper, a slight awe in her tone. Naruto chuckled as he rubbed the back of his head. I am kind of awesome, aren't I? He spoke braggadociously. Rias felt her face sink into a deadpan, before her arm shot out and caught the blonde in the side. He doubled over almost instantly. Hey, I'm still injured here. Rias huffed as she made to march off. Well, if you were so awesome, you wouldn't be injured, would you? She shrugged as she walked away. Naruto grinned through his wincing. He was glad she wasn't mad at him anymore. Now if only he could get her to stop hitting him randomly. Thank you.